Welcome back to another video. My name is Derek and today we're going to be taking a look at this iPhone SE. This is a 2020 version and it's got an issue where the touch doesn't work and it's boot looping every 3 minutes. So today I'm going to show you how we go about diagnosing that and how we go about fixing it. Let's get into the video. Let's take a look at this masterpiece of a phone. And holy cow, is it broken. Let's plug it in and see if we have any life. There we go, we got a battery logo. I'll let this charge for a little bit so we can see if it works in the condition that it's in. Alright, it came on, but as we can see, the touch is not working. Let's see if it's just a screen issue. Because we can't turn it off, we're just going to have to disconnect the battery. So let's pop out the pedal screws. I'm not too worried about the housing because we're going to be replacing it if we can get everything working on it. I'm just going to go ahead and, we're looping, which I've seen that with touch issues when it comes to a specific failure on this generation of iPhone. It's a fun repair. Not the easiest thing, but we'll see. All right, let's go ahead and pop off the screen. Inside doesn't look horrible. We'll take out the screws in the bracket, we'll disconnect the battery. Now we can disconnect this display. Get out our new screen, connect up the display, the digitizer, connect the battery, plug in the cable and tell it to turn on. On comes the Apple logo, and let's look and see if we have touch or not. I'm gonna guess we don't have touch. All right, and we do not have touch. So let me show you how to diagnose this so we can fix it. Go ahead and disconnect the battery and screen. We'll gently disconnect the proximity sensor. We'll pop off the bracket, disconnect the proximity sensor and front-facing camera assembly. Now we'll go over to the microscope so we can see if we can isolate the issue with the touch. Alright, so we've got the display connectors here. You can see kind of in the same orientation here. If we zoom down on in there, we get these values that we're going to be looking for to see if we can isolate which line we're having an issue on. I've got my multimeter set in diode continuity mode, and we'll put a red probe on ground, and we'll come in and we're going to start with pin number 1, and we'll work down the odd side, so 1, 3, 5, 7, etc. And we'll jump over to the evens. Alright, first pin, get 0.481, that's close enough. 0.56, yep, OL. So this line kind of reads odd, as you can see it says 1462, so it's probably okay. 0.257, that's good. 0.51, that's good. 0.48, 0.32, 0.32, ground. All right, so I'm missing this one right here. I noticed there's 0.32 here and 0.32 here, but the one in the middle, I just have an open line, which is this one right here. And of course, look at the description that it says. This is SP, what did it say? SPL1 AP to touch. Okay, all right, let's see. That guy is connected to the CPU and there is no components that it goes through. In fact, for example, if I come up here and I hit next, it's literally going to toggle between the pin, the little capacitor here, and the CPU. So that we're getting OL on, which means this line is broken. Let's see if there are any other lines. So you can see here, the top line coming out to here. If we click on the mid, alright, so we click on the line that comes off of it, it dives in the board here, it resurfaces here, this little test point. So before we go digging around, let's check around the actual capacitor itself and see if there's any reason for it to have an issue there. Drop some isopropyl alcohol down onto these stickers, then they'll want to come up nicely, and when we're done we can actually put them back. So we've got this empty space here, and then it's this one right here. Let's see if it's broken at all. The solder joints actually look really good down there, down below, but just to be certain, let's poke down there and make sure we don't get a reading. Alright, so we've got the empty spot right here, one above it getting 0.3 OL. Even on the pin and on the capacitor as well, we're getting OL. And it doesn't look like anyone's damaged this connector, so it's definitely not that. Alright, let's go down the rest of the connector and just double check everything else real quick. So here's our ground, and we got an OL, 0.35, it's close enough. 0.32, close enough. 0.44, 5, 0.45, yep, good. Ground, and these last four we got 3.5, yep. 6.0, that's good enough. 4.5, yep. The last one, we got 6.0, okay, that's good. We'll jump over to the other side, top one. I'm just gonna go through these real quick. All right, so everything is good except for this pin right here where we're getting an open line. All right, so you can see that it goes down. Actually, from in the second layer, it actually pops back up into the second to top layer, which is better. And then it wiggles its way around past the SIM tray. Right here, we'll follow this. And here it comes up and exposed. Okay, so this is a good spot for us to go and look for it. Right here. All right, so here we got the SP1. So it's this third one right here. We hover over it. We've got SP1L AP to touch. Okay. So we are looking for this connection here. So let's go take out the board real quick. All right, we got the motherboard out. I'm just going to cut through a little sticker here. The reason this issue occurs in the first place is because of the design of this logic board. There's really nothing reinforcing the back here. And there's a fault line there between the two, between the SIM tray and this. So it's weak, and that joint in particular breaks. So you'll lose the connection between the CPU and the pin on the connector there. So we're going to restore that real quick by going through that process. I'm going to first go over and remove the shield, and then we'll go back under the microscope. All right, so we've got my hot air set at 450 degrees Celsius. We want this off nice and quickly, so we're going to go extra kind of hot. Got a 50% airflow, little circles. The graphite sticker on the top definitely is going to pull away some heat. They never come off cleanly. At least I can never get them to come off cleanly. You can leave it on and take it off, so that's what I'm going to do. Heat it up from the top evenly and pop it off just like that. Set that aside, and now we'll go under the microscope. So it's actually quite scary sometimes to go with this next step, just because you're going to be working with a razor blade. What I'm looking to do is basically remove the top layer of the logic board without cutting too deep. What I'm going to do is we're going to score. I'm going to score right here alongside the grounders here. We'll go on this side and do the same. Take it sideways here. And you see how we're basically, if I go like this, all we're revealing is this copper layer. We need to get under that copper layer. So let me zoom down in on there further. You want a really sharp scalpel when doing this. This one's kind of dull. I can probably make it work just fine. There, I can see under it now. Anytime I get a piece of copper, I'm going to make sure I clear it. Don't want it going under something and shorten the component out. And we'll keep on peeling it up until I've basically gotten rid of that whole section I cut out. You can see it kind of rolls away from the score line. So it might be kind of hard to see, but what I'm looking for, if I drip some alcohol, for example, on there, are those little traces that are down in there. I can see this is actually quite difficult to make out. But what we have is we've got two bigger lines here, a gap, and then 1, 2, 3 lines. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a little bit of flux down there and a little bit down below on my silicon mat here. I'm gonna get my jumper wire. This is 0.02, super small jumper wire. And I'm gonna try to just tin the tip here, like so. And we'll take it on down, and we're gonna gently tack this on that connector, right down on the side of it, trying not to melt it. We can even just tack it to the capacitor here, like so, but I'm gonna get it a little bit better on there. Okay, now it's on there. Some alcohol there, clean up some of that flux. Now I'm gonna get some UV solder mask in the end of my tweezers, and we're just going to cover up the end there. This will help kind of almost glue it in place, and we'll hit it with the UV light. All right, so what I've done is I've attached it there and anchored it. So I've anchored it in a couple spots. You can see the green there, and then a few spots next to the SIM tray, and then it hooks around into that area where I need to solder it down to that tiny little trace that's exposed there. So for now, what I'm going to do is just gently set this out of the way. Come in with some flux because we need to tin up that trace. Go down in there. I think I'm uncovering the one next to it on accident when trying trying to tin it, so we gotta be careful. All right, I've tinned it. Now I've got to tin the end of the jumper here without messing it up. So we're gonna come in, find the right length, gently part it off there without digging too far into the board. Zoom down on in there. Actually, I'm gonna try to pre-tin this trace. I'm gonna get some solder on the end of my iron tip. There we go, we've got solder on the end of the jumper. And now the hardest part of all, getting it to solder to just the trace we need to without it jumping over to the neighboring trace that I somehow managed to expose. I can work with that. Might have to use a razor blade to hold it in place because that tweezer's just a little too big for the gap there. All right, it's kind of blurry for you guys, sorry. Not that you can see much anyway with how dark it is. Just checking it. It's soldered on there, clearing away all of the flux. It's definitely not touching the neighboring trace. So I'll add some isopropyl alcohol. I'm afraid of brushing it because of how weak that joint is. Go down gently with some Q-tip. You can't get all the way in there, so I'll just dab it with a piece of the Q-tip. And before we go any further, I want to see if I've restored the value to that pin. So we'll switch it to continuity, diode mode, got my red probe on ground. Somehow we now have a short. Got to find out where. It should be enclosed. This wire isn't necessarily exposed to anything. It might be shorting out right at the very end here. Things like this happen. I'm going to gently break away all of the beautiful glue jobs that I did. Okay. Alright, so disconnected it. Let's go down and test the trace right now. Getting the right reading on the trace. Let's go over to our pad, and we're getting OL now. So at some point it was making contact with the ground plane. I'm going to go back in and try to solder it now that it's kind of free again and see if we can get it to not have a short. Might have cut it too short, to be honest, which I hate having to redo jumpers, but I might have to take a break and come back to it. All right, let's check that. Are we short again? And we were for a second, and then it cleared up. I think what'll happen is if I coat this area in UV mask, I'll actually be able to isolate the problematic area because I believe it's on the end here. So if I come down in here and I paint and we check again, we'll still need to cure it, but let's see what I get on my reading. All right, third time's a charm. Fluxed it up. We've all had those days where things just don't always go as planned. All right, let's see if that one works this time. We'll come in with our probes. We're looking for 0.32. Oh yeah, 0.32. We finally got it. Now we just have to make sure it stays that way. So I'm going to get UV mask out, flood this area. We can secure it. Doesn't get accidentally bumped, and we'll hit it with the UV light. Alright, so we'll just cure it with the UV light. I'm going to double check that I still have the proper reading on that pin. 0.32. So I do. Okay, I'm going to cure it in several spots, adding some more, just so we can make sure that wire doesn't accidentally slide around too much or at all. Alright, so the next step, I'm going to take the stickers that we pulled off before. And this will help kind of protect the wire as well. We'll stick them back in place. We'll take our multimeter and just make sure that didn't compress anything that potentially is touching ground. And I'm still getting... And now we'll just take our multimeter and we'll check and see if it's still good after putting the sticker down. And it is. We'll put back the other stickers. So that's what I'll call them, the little sponge mesh things. And at the top I need to remove this small amount of clear epoxy. And I made the mistake of accidentally leaving this on when desoldering the shield. I should have removed this one as well. I'm just going to take it off now that it's singed. Now I'm going to grab the shield and I'm going to cut off with some wire cutters here these first two legs that would have otherwise stuck down and interacted with that wire, so that now when I go to put it down, that isn't going to be touching the new jumper. And instead of flowing this into place with hot air, I'm actually going to just go around the border and manually solder it on. Just going around and tacking all of the joints. Should be enough factory flux on here still to make this work. Otherwise I can just add some more. And that looks like it's sufficient. Alright, let's test it one more time with the multimeter before we go and install it back into the frame to test. 0.32. Looks like we're good. Alright, so we've got that. The wire coming up here. Not necessarily the prettiest with the way these stickers end up, but No big deal. We'll go ahead and just put back the board. We don't need to connect everything up. We have to be gentle about not potentially damaging our little jumper. Alright, I've connected up the power button. I'm going to put our one of the standoff screws back in. We'll take the original broken screen and let's gently connect that up. There's the proximity sensor. Got the display and digitizer gently. Now we'll connect up the battery and let's see if this powers on. Here's the power button and Apple logo. And let's see if we restored touch. Alright, it's on and let's see if it hits close, and it does. And would you look at that, we've got our touch back. Go ahead and power it off. Alright, I've got a used housing here. It looks a whole lot better than this. So we're going to go ahead and transfer everything that we need to. Looks like we've got the power button in here, wireless charger. Everything else though needs to be transferred. And just like that, it's all transferred over. And it's looking a ton better. And take a small piece of Captain tape, put it over that just to help keep that sticker down. Transfer over the ear speaker and front facing camera assembly. Take off the bracket, gently lift up the camera. Ear speaker comes out. Take some tweezers and carefully go under the flex cable. And out comes the assembly. And then we'll reverse that on the new screen. We'll line up the pegs. Put back the ear speaker, put back the bracket, and all of the screws. Now we'll transfer over the home button, disconnect the home button, carefully pop it out, and push it through. Now we'll install the new home button. Now we'll install the home button, gently connect it down, put back the bracket, and we'll put back the screws. And now it's time to install the display. We'll connect up the proximity sensor, and I like to leave it like this so that I'm not having to contend with the screen when I'm putting back the bracket and screws. Put back the 3 screws. Now we'll connect up the screen and we'll connect up the battery, back the bracket, and the screws. Alright, and before I fully install it, let's go ahead and power it on and make sure everything still works. There we've got the Apple logo. Alright, and touch is still working everywhere. That's good. Let's just double check that our Touch ID still works. And look at that, it does, even through the plastic. Plug it in, make sure it charges, and it does. And then we just need to also make sure that we can leave it here and not have it boot loop at the 3-minute mark. So we've got probably less than 2 minutes now until it would do that. So let's just see what happens. Alright, and it's boot looping. So we need to take a look and see if we can address that issue. Alright, so sometimes when that issue occurs, we have an issue on the charge port connector on some of the I2C lines, and I should have checked it beforehand, but we can check it now. Alright, so sometimes when we have issues with the touch, we also have issues with some of the I2C lines that come off the charge port. Yeah, I can't remember exactly which ones they are, so we're just going to go down the list real quick. I believe they're these two because they're the ones that read the same 3.32. But I'm just going to go ahead and test the charge port pins just to see if we have anything odd going on. So we'll put our red probe on ground. And I get 0.38, that's good. Ground, OL, that's good. 0.7, that's good. 7, 0.65, that's good. 0.3, oh, it disappeared. Let me try that again. 0.65, 0.315, okay, 315. So this is odd. I do get it occasionally. I get the reading occasionally. Like right now I'm getting it, but I go back up to this one and it says OL, but then it comes and goes. I think we have a small break, but there's still connection as long as the board is bent in the right way. If I'm not pushing hard with the probes, then I don't get the reading at all. Alright, so I'm getting OL on this one. What are you? 4, 2. Alright, so on pin 8, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I'm not getting a reading. Okay, so if we hit next, it jumps straight up to this little resistor and then goes straight to the CPU. And it is the I2C 1AP SDA. In fact, if we go and look up here, I think it's this line next to it. So the line next to the one we jumped to is the I2C AP SDA. So this is broken. This one, SCL, like it's the one next to it. So I'm going to run jumpers for both of these. All right. So, but the nice thing is I don't necessarily have to dig into the board because each one of these has a resistor that I can tie into. All right. So right now I'm working on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on this one. And if we jump up to where that goes next, we can see that it comes up and we can count from the bottom of the CPU. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a little gap and then 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This little gap and then 6. I clean off this area and I need to tie into the bottom of it. So I'm going to put a little flux there. Get out my soldering iron. Let's see if we can do add just a little bit of solder to the end of that resistor. Help us tack it better. Okay. And I ended up cutting it just too short, so I'm going to have to redo both sides, but it's not a big deal. All right, that's tacked nicely. Let's clean it up. While we're here, let's do this one as well. The second from the top. Yes, it was. And it's the bottom side of the second resistor. Okay. So let's zoom in down there. All right, that one's on there as well. Let's clean it up as well. If you can brush at it and it stays and you know that it's intact enough. Sometimes it's a little risky to do this, but hey. Okay, we'll put some solder mask on them and we'll cure it with the UV light. All right, so looking at this, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. These 2 pins that we verified aren't reading right. Basically, they're capacitors that they jump out to. This one and this one I can tie into if I'm careful. Alright, so I've taken the jumpers and I've wrapped them around the back, isolated them with some Captain tape, and they come over and then they meet up with their corresponding pins. Alright, so now that we've done that extra work, let's go ahead and put this on back together, take our display, connect it up. All right, now that we have that all connected, let's go ahead and make sure it still powers on. We've got the Apple logo. We want to see touch is still there. And then we've got to wait for the 3-minute mark to see if we get a boot loop or not. But we should be good now. All right, so let's wait and see if we get a 3-minute boot loop or not. You can see we are now almost at the 3-minute mark. And I already have seen it stay on the entire time it's charged, but we have the touch. There's quite a bit of work to work on that board. But we are approaching the 3 minutes. So we can basically call this repaired. We can put back the penelope screws and we can call it a day. And there we go. We've got our touch back. It's not boot looping anymore, so this phone is fixed. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more future videos like this. Thanks a ton for watching. We'll see you in the next video.